It looks like I'm live and everything seems to be working. So maybe somebody will come on the chat board and help me out here. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I guess it's working now. Oh, problem solved. I think. I hope. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. Everything is working. Nobody's on the chat board. Hello? Anybody there? It's a public show. Welcome to tonight's Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, which is running a little late because we usually start at 7:30. We tried to start at 8:30, and here we are at 9:42 on this Wednesday night. Hi, Abba Steinhauser. I hope everything is okay. Um, I had to cancel the original show because I was having huge technical issues again, but I was able to find somebody that helped me to fix it, which is really great. Um, Short films. Hi there. Welcome to your personal Joe show with Joe Chaffee. I don't know what else to call it. I've been just kind of testing. You can hear me, both of you. Can you hear me? Okay. There's no. Hi, Mike Waterhouse. So can you hear me? You guys hear me? Okay. And there's no circle of death. There's no buffering. I'm hoping there isn't. So if you're having an issue, I would appreciate it if you tell me. Sounds good and looks good. Okay, Abba says we can hear you. Can you see me? Uh, Jacob Mac Mindfulness. Yes, you're working just fine. All right, so how about we do a show? I don't know where Joe Rayo is. I think he went and took a shower. So you know what? Since I have an audience of 5 or 6, hi Dave Carter. Okay, and everything is working, and I'm a happy camper. Um, so there. So here, yeah, let's do it. Okay, so first off, let's take a look and what's going on, watches and warnings wise. They're kind of disjointed here with these flood watches that we have up from coastal Maine, southeastern New Hampshire, and the eastern half of Massachusetts down into Rhode Island and a small portion of northeast Connecticut. Then we just jump down to southeast Virginia and eastern North Carolina where we have flood watches there. Then we jump down further south where we have flood watches in southern Georgia and in on the Florida Panhandle, somewhere northwest of Tampa to maybe about Panama City. So that's that. Hi, Tom. I got my problem fixed. You should not have any buffering. Okay. So I'm really thrilled. I'll explain what happened in a bit. In the West, we've got some winter storm warnings up in California. We've got some wind advisories up out there in the West as more energy is coming in. In the middle, we actually have, because it's the growing season now, so we've got frost advisories and freeze warnings up for Western Tennessee, frost advisories surrounding that in Central Tennessee and also in Northern Mississippi and back up through much of Arkansas. So that's good. And you can see the train that is setting up here along the eastern seaboard. We have this stalled frontal boundary that's making its way very close to the coast and goes down into the eastern Gulf of Mexico. And it's waiting for a wave that's going to develop tonight or is starting to develop in coastal South Carolina. And that's going to eventually take that front out of here and further east. But until then, we've got moisture just continuing to stream up the eastern seaboard. In the west, we've got new energy coming in. You see it there. There's a big swirl off the coast of the Pacific Northwest, and that is going to bring mountain snows and valley rains to the western part of the United States. As we check out the radar, let me give this a refresh here. And lead batch of rain came up this evening. That has moved on out. Um, and now then there's a little gap, and now we've got more rain that's developed down in Delaware and southern New Jersey and expanding across much of central and eastern Virginia into central North Carolina. And you start to get into some thunderstorms that are in the mix there, extending all the way down to southern Georgia and pretty busy here in northern Florida on the radar. And in the west, we've got a lot going on with patchy rains in California on up through Oregon and Washington. We also have rain and also some snow in eastern Washington and in parts of Idaho and over in Nevada. So the radar is showing that western moisture feed that's going to be going on for quite a while. Just give me, there you go. I just check something there. All right. So WPC, just going to check out the 2 day rainfall. By the way, I see your questions and I'll get to them in a second. WPC. Uh, has the 2 day rainfall covers this system completely. So this takes us actually to Friday night, and they've got 3/4 of an inch to an inch along the coast, the inch and a half in eastern Long Island, also in southeastern Connecticut. I'm sorry, eastern Connecticut, Rhode Island. Then you get into like a 2 inch band that's over eastern Massachusetts down to Cape Cod. Also showing some rather large amounts of 2 to 3 inches in the eastern half of North Carolina, and then it tails off sharply to the west. Notice it cuts off once you get into eastern, to the other side of the Jersey line. You get down to 1/4 of an inch and 1/10 to an inch. So it's kind of a sharp cutoff here that we're dealing with this north-south frontal boundary and the developing wave on it. If we jump to 7 days, of course, then we have another system probably a week from now that brings precipitation. So that's why the numbers bulge up to about 2 inches from Maine down to North Carolina. And then also back, you see inch and a half plus in western Pennsylvania and West Virginia, back across northern Ohio and into Indiana and southern Michigan. Out in the west, pretty busy here. We've got areas of several inches of liquid, including in the Sierra Nevadas, and there's going to be snow there to deal with, and parts of the Cascades, as well as the northern Rockies down the Wasatch and into Arizona. And the Storm Prediction Center, we'll take a look at what's going on tonight. We have a small area of marginal risk in coastal South Carolina and coastal Georgia. Otherwise, there really isn't much happening. We have thunderstorm risk up in the Pacific Northwest, by the way. Tomorrow, no severe weather is forecast. And for the next day, which is Friday into Saturday, we have no severe weather that is forecast. So I just want to, I mentioned earlier, before we do that, let's go to, I'm going to bring up pivotal weather because I do want to show you something on this. Hang on one second. What happens when I palm down too heavy on the computer? So let's go to pivotal weather here. And I want to show you two different model runs today that kind of made me laugh in a big way. So I will let's put the local map here. And this will be the GFS. I think it was the 0Z run last night. And I'm going to put the snow. And this was added, I think, at about 220 hours. So it was for some system toward the end of next week. So I'll just bring this up. It was one of the more ridiculous maps. Take a look at this. I mean, this is really hilarious. A couple of tenths of an inch in New York City, 8/10 of an inch in Brentwood. It gave 11.4 for Bridgeport, 13.5 for Middletown, 12 and a half for Poughkeepsie, 23.6 in Norwich, 43.8 inches. This was from one storm, by the way. Okay. 43.8 inches in Worcester, 42.4 for Boston, Lowell, Mass, 53.5, Providence, 50.9, Take a look up in Maine. None of this is real. I mean, clearly this is all bull, you know, horse hockey. Manchester 42.8, but then from Manchester's 42.8, it drops down to 8.7 in Portland. I mean, this was one of the more ridiculous snow maps I think I've ever seen, given the winter we've had. And now that we're talking about the early part of April, this was just hilarious. This was just really funny to see. And the other map is the NAM, which I'm going to bring up. This is the 18Z NAM for today. So let's do the 18Z NAM run, and here we go. So you can see what it has down the St. Lawrence Valley, uh, 2 feet or more in some places. And Manchester, New Hampshire, 16.7. So I'm going to go south because it had it changing over. Look at this. I mean, this was ridiculous. Almost 5 inches in Tom's River, 4 inches in Long Branch, 3.2 in New York City, 5 in Brentwood. This is from the weather front and the low that develops on it tomorrow. Okay. This isn't on the NAM. So this was two ridiculous snow maps in a row today. So I wanted to kind of highlight that. And now let's take a look at, I think, what's really going to happen. So we'll take a look at the 0Z HRRR, which is a good one to use. And, you can see this is like a frontal boundary because of how north-south oriented all the rain is. And you just go a handful of miles on either side of this band and you've got nothing. And here you go. So there's this rain. This first surge we had, another surge is coming up in a few hours and during the overnight, a short break, then a third surge that comes in tomorrow around late morning through the afternoon. And your low is sliding well out to the east. Now, what keeps us from getting into a heavy rain this time around is the fact that the low is not marching all the way up the coast. It's actually sliding out to the east. Once the low gets going, it pulls the frontal boundary out to the east, and the rain ends as rain. Okay. You see where it changes over to snow, northernmost New Hampshire and northern Maine. And of course, you can also see that the low is starting to deepen. So it goes east first and then turns northward. And that really saved us from having another wicked rain event here. But it is going to probably rain hard in eastern, southeastern New England and also in up into Maine, coastal Maine, with snow up in the northern part of the state as the low wraps up to a 979 low in the Gulf of Maine by the time we get on into Saturday. So there's that, and we'll just go back now to the GFS, and you can take a look. The GFS pretty much does the same idea here, and you see most of the yellows in the heavier range are just offshore. Then it all goes out during Thursday night, and then Friday will be a windy, drier day, and I really don't see anything happening as far as the weekend is concerned. Just want to take a look at the upper air here because we are going into a bit of a blocking pattern. You can see what's happening all across the Arctic region. We're getting higher than normal pressures all here. And with the blocking pattern, the jet stream is displaced further south. So we're getting some cold, chilly air from Canada. You've got upper lows all over the place, one off the west coast, one off the east coast. And so it goes as we move through the rest of the week and going into the weekend. And that block really, you get a closed upper high there over Greenland as we move into next week. So that's going to want to force energy to go to our south. And you can see there's an upper low that cuts off and goes out off the New Jersey coast. If there was, any kind of quality cold air around with this sort of pattern, where was this pattern 2 weeks ago? I mean, just 2 weeks ago, this would have been made a huge difference. But this is just the way the whole game has been played. And then as we move through next week, eventually there's troughing that comes back into the western part of the United States, particularly in western Canada down through Alaska. So that's going to shut off. That eventually breaks that pattern down. And then we go into, something that we've been used to, which is troughs in the west and ridges, more ridging in the eastern part of the US. So that is I think that's pretty much, where we're going to go with all of this. And as far as the rain is concerned here, just let me wrap this backwards here. There's your front, your low goes out. Friday looks good. Then there's a weak disturbance that's coming out of the Central Plains that's moving through northern Illinois, northern Indiana. That's going to weaken on Saturday, but it might bring a little rain to the southwestern part of PA, and then eventually maybe the southeast part to southern New Jersey. This would be Saturday afternoon and evening. Other than clouds to the north of there, I don't, I really don't see much in the way of issues this weekend. Sunday looks okay, and then we've got another system from all this western energy. Another one's going to push a frontal boundary to our south on Monday. So you can see there's precip there that runs from Illinois and Indiana down into Virginia, and there's a high building to the north that's kind of forcing all that moisture to go south. And then a low does finally come out around Tuesday and moves eastward. Now there is a blocky pattern here, so the low is going to try to want to go to the lower lakes or the upper Ohio Valley. It might be this might be a situation if the block is strong enough where everything would be a little further south. I still think in the end it's all this is a rainy situation here and not that mess that the GFS showed last night. And then that goes away, and then we start to get into more of a ridge position as we move towards April 7th, April 8th, and then we'll probably see some temperatures that'll try to warm up a bit. But I just thought those maps today were just icing on the cake in what was in the winter that we had. Now I saw a couple of questions. Who had it? What we're talking about the frost and freeze advisories. They're up. They're up because of the fact that in those areas, because the growing season has already started across the South. So once the growing season starts, which is usually around mid to late March, they start to put up frost advisories when we get cold air masses that come down, and you'll see them go up as long as there are cold air masses coming down. They'll be putting up the frost advisories, and you'll see them also eventually once we get through the middle part of April. After anything after the middle part of April, you'll see the Northeast offices and the Mid Atlantic states offices will start putting up frost advisories as well. So you got your own personal weathercast here, which was really nice. There's only 31 people on right now, which is really great. And no buffering, no nothing. Thank you. So what I did was I should have done this before, but I didn't think of it till yesterday. And then when I thought everything was working this morning, I didn't bother. And then I saw that it wasn't. So I called up my internet service provider. And what he did was, and I mean, I don't, I can work my way around a computer. I sort of know what this most lot of stuff means, but you put me next to an 18-year-old, I'll look like a dummy, or even a 10-year-old when it comes to this sort of stuff. So what he did was, I told him what my problem was, and we checked everything in terms of my speed. Everything was working fine. Everything else was working fine. The router was working fine. He changed my DNS numbers so that to Google's, so that and Google YouTube is Google, and Google is YouTube. So now instead of having my stuff that gets routed, however it gets routed back to Google, instead of going through uh, two routes or two areas or three areas, now it goes straight to Google. And once he did that, everything seems to be working fine. Okay. I'm just kind of hesitant because I just noticed that my speed just sort of dropped off a little bit. So I'm hoping that this holds. Nobody's seeing any buffering. Nobody is seeing any having any audio issues, I assume. I know, Tom, you don't know what it means. So you see, it wasn't that I'm on a Windows machine. If I were on a Mac machine, I would have had the same problem. But it has to do with how this was being routed. And because like when you send something up on the internet, whatever it is, it goes to one server, it goes to a server, or it goes to another server. However, that's all played. And he set it now so that it goes directly to Google. So I'm just hoping that's what tomorrow when I try this, um, everything will work out okay. So Anyway, like I said, I am a happy camper. All right. So thanks, guys, for coming on. I really appreciate it. No buffering, Paulie, just cold weather. I get it. So tomorrow night we're an 8 o'clock start. Okay. 8 o'clock start for tomorrow night. And there's not going to be a show on Easter Sunday, just so you know. I'll give you a heads up on that. So no show on Easter Sunday. So I'm just going to say good night. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you tomorrow. Night night.